meeting to order. I'd like to first express regrets from Trustee Dolan, who's unable to be here tonight. We respectfully acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people. And before we move into our adoption of agenda, I'd just like to take a few moments to recognize a couple of folks that have passed very recently and who the Cowichan Valley School District will miss. The first is Richard Jeremy, or Jerry Joyce. His dates are from July 15th, 1931 to January 24th, 2017. Jerry was a school trustee with the Cowichan Board, number 65, for 10 years, from 1975 to 1985. And for all that time, he served as chair of what was then called the Buildings and Sites Committee. The second person is Jane Williams, a longtime teacher at Chemainus Elementary, who was on medical leave since last fall. She passed away on January 31st, 2017. Our deepest condolences are sent to families and friends. Moving to the adoption of the agenda, moved by Trustee Smith, seconded by Trustee Thornton. All those in favor, motion carries. Moving to minutes of January 3rd, 2017 open meeting. Moved by Trustee DeGroot, seconded by Trustee Thorne. All those in favor, motion carries. Moving to recognition and delegations, and we have here Cowichan Secondary School to talk to us about independent directed studies, and I'll refer to Principal Charlie Bowman.
Hi. Come on up, guys. I'll pass these around to the table. Pass these on the side. I'd like to introduce a couple of students and hopefully a third. Stalling a little bit for them. We wanted you to have a chance to hear from some students who are doing something that the district, I think all the high schools have done for a few years in small numbers. One kid here, one kid there. But the last year, and especially this year, we've really seen the independent directed studies options grow. And we've just brought a couple of kids to tell you a little bit about their independent directed studies project. And what you have on that one sheet of paper there is the approximate numbers of students that are taking part in IDS, and a list, I think I got it all in alphabetical order, of some of the individual projects that kids are working on. So I've got here Maddie and Solomon. They're going to each tell you a little bit about the project that they're doing. I told them no stress and no long speeches, just keep it short and maybe you might have some questions. So, Maddie.
So I'm Maddie Mohan, grade 12 student at Cowichan Secondary, and my IBS project is learning about technical theater. So it's like basics of sound design, set design, lighting, and all that cool stuff that you get to do backstage at a theater performance. And this was all really new to me at the beginning of the course. I didn't really know what IBS was about, and I originally went into it for recording music. And then I found the theater and met all the guys there, and they kind of told me about their job, and I'm like, whoa, you can actually do this as a job. So it was kind of cool to me, and then I just got introduced into like a whole new world that I never knew existed, and like totally fell in love with it. And it's kind of given me a direction to go with my life, because I was like super scared of grade 12, and like, you have to make all these decisions, and I don't know what I want to do with my life, and all that. I'm sure like we've all been there. But yeah, I'm going to go to VIU next year and take their 4-year technical theater program, which I'm super excited about, to actually kind of have a direction of what I want to do.
Solomon.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks everybody. My independent directed studies project was a project on personal fitness and nutrition. I was trying to progress in my rock climbing career at Cal High, and am considering a future in rock climbing. So it was very helpful to help me push past my plateaus and make new ground. The independent directed studies program has done a lot for me. I was able to work at my own pace with very minimal supervision. I was able to go carry out goals that I felt were achievable and would help me in my journey. And Ms. Keppel and everybody, all the staff at Cal High, were very helpful in facilitating that with the program.
Thank you. Pretty exciting stuff that you can go to school and like being there and learning about things you're interested in. So that's wonderful. Questions or comments from trustees? Trustee Schmidt?
Only because I live in the couch and theater half the time. Have they let you work on a show, an actual performance?
I am there for almost all the shows that they have on the schedule right now. They're super willing to let me learn. I get a lot of hands-on experience, and the guys basically just let me have run of the building.
Nice.
And I get to learn like all aspects of theater, which is super cool.
It's a good job in the end.
Thank you. Further comments, trustees? Well, thank you so much for coming and letting us know what IDS is, because we hear about that and it's thrown around at meetings and so on, but we have not had a presentation about it, so it's very fortunate that you're here to enlighten us. Thank you.
It's fantastic.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman, as well.
Thanks, you guys.
Okay, moving on, number 5, report of closed meetings, Secretary Treasurer Segwas.
Thank you. Prior to this meeting, the board met in closed session and discussed communications, compensation, and contractual items.
Thank you. Moving to old business, A, the action list. Are there items that staff or trustees wish to discuss on that?
Yes.
Mr. Sandwood.
Just wanted to bring up the transportation review. We have been collecting information for the transportation review. And also the province are collecting information as well as part of the Bill 28 implications, which may involve catchment areas, transportation, and capacity issues.
Thank you. Any further questions, trustee?
Just have a question. I know that from the conversation that we had earlier, there's a lot of unknowns around in Bill 28 implications. We don't know where all of our kids are going to be, what our capacity will be in our schools, what our buses are going to be asked to do. So I am asking the board to approve a motion that the Board of Education postpone the transportation review until the implications of the Supreme Court of Canada decision on Bill 28 are known.
Thank you. Moved by trustee DeGroot, seconded by trustee Thorne. Discussion. Trustee Shen?
I did ask via email Trustee DeGroot some questions just for clarification, because I think that moving forward with the review will give us a better idea of everything that's going on and what we want to look at. Whether it's now or 3 months from now, we're still going to be in the same position, and I think that if we continue to move forward with the review, at least we'll have a better knowledge of what's going on with our transportation, so that when we find out what the implications of Bill 28 are, the two will be able to go, the board will have more information. And I just think that canceling the review is maybe stepping us backwards a bit on information that we could probably utilize. So I don't know that I could support the motion.
Thank you. Trustee DeGroot?
It's not canceling, it's postponing.
Postponing the motion. Can I just offer a comment first, Trustee Hutchinson? That is, I just want to ask staff, do we know exactly where we need to transport all of our kids next year, given Bill 28? Do we already know what we need to prepare for, or are we still waiting for more information in order to know much about our transportation?
I'll start. Mr. Sanquist can jump in. We have quite a good idea of the class size implications for next year, brought on by Bill 28. We really don't have very clear picture of what the class composition implications of Bill 28 will be, and how that might require a fair movement of students in the district. We just, or not, we just don't know the implications of that. And it sounds like we may not know that for a bit. We know the class size piece pretty clearly, but the class composition piece is still quite an unknown. Mr. Sanders might know.
Mr. Sandquist?
Correct. We've done some projection work, and the class size, as Mr. Allen said, the class size piece has a lot less potential impact than class size and composition. Class size and composition has some significant implications on some of our schools, should it,
Depending on.
depending on how, yeah, right, depending on how it's actually resolved, but certainly could involve students at capacity or exceeding capacity, and other schools that have capacity. So having to either move catchment areas is a potential, or transport students is definitely a potential, but not known yet.
Thank you. Trustee Hutchins and then Trustee Thorne.
So the resolution speaks to not dealing with this until we have an answer. Do we know when we'll have an answer to those questions? Will they be in place by September 1st?
Don't know.
According to the CPC AGM session that I attended last week, there's so many unknowns so far, but yeah, I think they were very hesitant about concluding by September on the reality of what we will be knowing. Where was I tonight? Trustee Thorne?
I think my concern is I want to get the information, yes, but I don't want to support something now and not know the outcome. I want to make sure that we've agreed to make sure that students first, and if we go ahead and agree to something now, I'm just scared that we're going to get bit in the hiney. I want to make sure that we've got our P's and Q's lined up and we know what's going to happen. So that's why I'm supporting Trustee DeGroot's motion.
Thank you. Trustee Crawford?
I have a question for our staff, and that is that have we completed gathering data? Because isn't it part of a review having your hands on all the data that you have before you project it forward? So presumably to continue to gather data would affect whatever we do down the line.
Mr. Sandquist, have you concluded your data collection?
I believe so. I believe within the current context, not within what could be.
Trustee Schmidt and then Trustee Hutchins.
I guess, and that's why I don't want to support this motion, is because if one of the board's strategic goals was the transportation review. We have less than 2 years left in our term. And if we postpone it until all the unknowns are known, that could be at the end of our term.
Thank you. Trustee Hutchins?
Yeah, I also am concerned about the motion. I believe the review is to create a template to go forward, and the dynamics of the school and the population, where we have to move kids, fits into any template. So I think we have to complete the review and ensure it's the best plan possible, or that unfolds, and then put the new reality into that plan. New reality should form the plan of how we do business. Should handle any new reality.
Trustee Croft?
Further comment speaking to Trustee Hutchison's comment, and that is that I think I can understand why we would suspend undertaking recommendations or actions on a review, because that is important, but I'm not too sure, I don't see the efficacy in suspending the review altogether, but rather what conclusions we draw from that review.
Can I just get clarity from staff then, in terms of the outcome of the review? Will it have recommendations for board action immediately, or it will just be a review without action?
That depends on the direction the board wishes to take the review.
Well, it's already in process, so what is the direction at this moment?
At this point, we've been gathering data, presenting data to the board. Here's the number of bus runs we have, the number of students we bus. Here's our walk limits and all those kinds of things, and put that in a context of our neighboring districts. That's been the work to date, and then trying to begin to look at implications of the budget implications of those various pieces. Some of those budget implications are predicated on certain knowing how many students move from here to there. It costs this much money. Without knowing at this point, moving forward, the challenge would be without knowing moving forward how many students it is. We've kind of done the calculations already. That's already completed with what is, with what will be. It's hard to run the numbers until we know.
Thank you, Trustee Croft.
So my question is, can we do any, I guess that's the obvious question, can we actually do anything more on the review until Bill 28 is resolved?
Over to either of you.
Not much.
Not much. Okay.
So it's a bit of a moot point anyway.
Thank you, Trustee Shen.
The board, the last time we had this conversation, I'm sorry, I don't know where my minutes are on that. The board had actually several questions that had been unanswered, and that was supposed to go back to staff and then come back to the board, and we haven't received those answers. So I think that if we continue with the review and the knowledge that we won't be able to make any recommendations, but at least get the review done, that I don't see, so that you're right, so we have all of our ducks in order. I mean, we may not be taking action until we know everything, but as long as everything's done and in order, so that when we know what the Bill 28, I mean, it just doesn't make sense to stop halfway through a process, and we are the board and we control what happens with that review. So to stop the review now with all those unanswered questions that we had last time we spoke about it, I don't see the problem with going through to get the information that we asked for, and if we don't do any recommendations from that point until we know the implications, then that's what we do.
Mr. Sandquist.
I believe we have the answers to those questions, but we have not presented them.
So then, can I have clarity on if we pass this motion, does it mean we can't have those answers? Trustee Schmidt.
But then what are we postponing? Because that's the last piece that we needed to move forward.
Oh, is it? Is that the last piece of information we will need?
It's the last piece that has been requested so far.
Trustee Croft. Okay, so I totally understand both sides, and I understand where you're coming from. I think I sense that the board is a little concerned that if we fully suspend the review, that we might miss something in terms of reporting, or it might have to be catch-up later on. So I'm just wondering, would it be helpful to say the review would be, I don't even think we need a motion, that the review continue with the understanding that certain things can't be done pending the resolution of class size and composition. I feel like we're stopping everything for one aspect, so can we continue on as far as is logical? I mean, I fully trust you guys, you're not going to be making up a plan for children that don't exist yet, right? So just because something came down through the board. So,
Okay, there is a motion on the floor. Could you read that motion again, please?
That the Board of Education postpone the transportation review until the implications of the Supreme Court of Canada decision on Bill 28 are known.
Question.
The question has been called. All those in favor of calling the question? Okay. We have the motion on the floor. All those in favor? 3. Those against? 3.
I missed that.
The motion fails. Okay,
My goodness.
First time we have all agreements on.
anything else on the action list?
Mr.
Trustee.
Principal Coleman has hand raised, Madam Chair.
There's questions at the end of,
We just had one more student from the delegation at the start. I didn't know if it was appropriate through the chair if we could back up in the agenda just to have Trey do his.
so trustees, are you okay if we back up a wee bit? Okay,
So I'd like to
Bring it
introduce
on.
Trey. He's going to tell you a little bit about his IBS project. Come on up, Trey. Just tell him what it was all about.
Hey, Dad. Hey, my name's Trey Graythorne. My independent directed study was on the Aboriginal history of, the history of Cowichan. I found this very interesting because in my program I was in the land-based program last semester. I got to learn about my history. I got to learn my culture a little more than I've been able to since I've been in school. I've been in school, I'm a grade 11 student now, and altogether, this is the utmost amount I've gotten to learn about my history, my culture, and the learning was actually fun to me. And if you know me, like my dad does, I'm not the best of just sitting around and learning. I like the hands-on work. That's what land-based gave me, along with my independent study. I got to go out into the world and pick the knowledge out as I went along. I got to see First Nation elders. I got to go and see things that you never would think you'd be able to see. In a regular classroom, you get these little textbooks that will tell you bits, chunks of pieces of information. Well, when you go out, you get it raw. You trust them. They're the elders of the community. They tell you everything they know, and then some. The experience you get from this is outstanding. I got to learn more about who I am and where I come from. I'm a Cowichan kid, born here, the Shannon as well. Oops. Oopsie. I've lived here my whole life, and I never knew anything about my history. I knew bits and pieces. I knew little pieces. My dad was able to tell me along my way. But this one I got to learn myself. I didn't have my dad to guide me on where I was going. This was plain and simply me. With help from the land-based program, letting me have my time to do what I had to do to get where I had to go. I found this to be very helpful towards me, mentally and spiritually. It helped me with this whole thing. If it wasn't for land-based, I would probably still be at home. They did something that no other regular class could do. They brought out this determination in me that a regular school couldn't. A regular class couldn't do. In a regular class, you don't get the experiences we got. You don't get the connection we have with each other and our teachers. We did learn in this class. We actually learned in this class.
Thank you.
thank you so much, Trey, for coming. We do have a question or comment from trustee
Trey, how
Hutchins.
did you demonstrate your learning? Did you have to tell your teacher what you learned, or
Well,
did
for
you write it? Or
in my independent directed study, I did a bit of a presentation. I did my own little keynote, a little slideshow, and I also brought in bits and pieces of my history that I've had and things I've learned along the way. So I did a little bit of a presentation. I did a bit of a hands-on type thing, because being me, I love hands-on. I like, that's a way people learn way easier than in a book. You get little bits in a book, but actually being able to do it and hold it and actually grasping it, you learn way more.
thank you.
Thank you, trustee Kraut.
When you're doing your research, what surprised you most? What was least expected?
I didn't expect it to be as difficult as it was, per se. Since I did it on the Cowichan history, there's not as many elders as there used to be. My dad and I both know my grandma was very very knowledgeable, and she passed a little while ago. So it makes it a little harder because you gotta find certain people. You can't trust what everyone says. Some people can backfire on someone else. You gotta find that raw material that is true. It was a good experience.
Great, well, thank you for taking the time to come and share with us, particularly how it impacted you personally. It's so important. So, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, moving. Okay, back to the action list. Our secretary treasurer has a couple more updates.
Yes, I just wanted to update trustees that we are continuing to work on policy and did some work around administrative procedures of the policies that were eliminated, and did a review of those. And start to see those now come onto the website. On the next two items down here, Place Speak and District Communications and Technology. Those items had components to them in the final reports, which were closed in nature, so they were dealt with in closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Oh, I'm sorry, was there a question over here?
Well, I was just wondering about the French immersion kindergarten registration.
I think that's exactly where
Thank you, Madam Chair. We completed the lottery process for French immersion. We actually drew the names last Friday, or last, I'm losing days with snow days, but late last week, to draw the names out, and are now just awaiting absolute complete confirmation on our kindergarten class size for next year, which is comes through the provincial work to know where we draw the line. But we have completed the lottery. Hopefully we're letting parents know tomorrow once we ensure that we know exactly how many kindergarten students we can have in a class.
Thank you. Anything further on the action list? Okay, moving back to 6B, Community Homelessness Initiative, and I just wanted to make sure that all trustees were aware that there have been a lot of initiatives going on in the community around homelessness and our interest of youth homelessness. In January and February, there's been meetings of various agencies preparing for the homeless count. Several sites, Warmland, Solomon's House, Friendship Center, and Magnet site, and I think there are a couple of other centers in there as well. We'll be doing the count. And at the Magnet site, all on February 21st, and this one from 10 to 3 at St. John's Church. Also, the Regional United Way has hired Cam Keller to do a summary of the homelessness situation in our valley and develop a plan to address the issue. The superintendent and I had a conference call with him last week where we answered many questions that they have, trying to get the picture of how is everything working in terms of the community and homelessness. On February 21st is the homeless count. On March the 6th, there's a day set community session called Everyone Should Have a Home, and that is bringing together all the agencies as well as interested individuals, and with the intent of creating a multi-year community plan to address homelessness. So things are happening out there, and I understand that Cam Keller's report should be done by the end of March, I've heard, so we should have access to that report as well. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, moving to Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no personnel issues to bring up. We'll talk about some under Bill 28 in the next section. District update. We have had approximately 40 volunteers trained in delivering naloxone. for overdoses and are in process and met this afternoon with folks from VHA and our public health nurses to determine how we can access the actual naloxone kits. That has been a bit of a struggle, but we now know the path forward. So we've had 40 volunteers trained in a number of our schools, and we have at least 20 to 30 more waiting to be trained in a second round of training. And again, those are not, we're not seeing issues with students, but we're certainly seeing issues around schools and within the community. So those are people that are wanting to be trained and carry naloxone kits for folks out in the community.
Before you go on, question, Trustee Crook?
Can a trustee get her name on the list for training?
A trustee could. Any particular
Could you- yes,
trustee?
could you-
You'd like to volunteer?
Yes, I would, thank you.
Okay. District challenge, some around the district things. In January, we had January 25th, our elementary intermediate challenge was hosted at George Bonner. The science challenge saw students build a tower of power. Given a set of supplies and some parameters, they had to build the tower to be as tall as possible, as well as be strong, and that was a great use of some old math textbooks to see how many of those old math textbooks the tower could hold. There's also an intermediate drama challenge where students had to create and rehearse a skit on the theme of the Home Shopping Network. Primary district challenge took place at Colemount Provo on February the 2nd, and the science challenge tasked students with building a structure that launched ping pong balls. Farthest distance traveled the winner. And there was also a drama challenge as well. Events had large numbers of kids, really well organized.
Trustee Schmidt?
I've been going to these challenges for years and years and years now, and I know we've had a bit of a change of the leadership since Lenore retired. And I just want to say that I attended this year as well, and it was very seamless switchover. So thank you to all those that got involved and did it. Both challenges, both the intermediate and the primary challenges, were just as lovely as they have been every other week. So
Thank you, great feedback.
Thank you.
Please pass it on.
I shall do that.
Okay.
Francis Kelsey Secondary. Just pause while I pick through see your screen. Grade 11 students at Francis Kelsey are participating in a variety of learning opportunities through their school-wide leadership program. One of the projects was working with Julie Parker, one of the vice principals, to take a group of Kelsey students to George Bonner over a number of weeks and act as reading buddies with primary students. It's okay.
I'll get them just in a
I'll
minute.
do it in mine. I'll do it in Dan's mind just in a moment.
That would be wonderful.
Senior students were first trained in a few basic reading and literacy strategies, and then the students developed a reading activity and followed a reading lesson plan designed by the students with their young folks at Kelsey. Here we are.
There's Kelsey.
There's Kelsey with some of the leadership students and some of the kids that they were working with. Bench Elementary had a literacy day on January the 27th. Well attended with many parents and grandparents coming in to read with their kids, and there you can see some of the reading going on. Chemaina Secondary had their annual dance showcase. Chemaina Secondary school dance put on their annual dance showcase on January 19th and 20th. Both nights had the multi-purpose rooms full. Teacher Ashley Bell poured her heart and soul into making it all happen, and the students put on a great show as always. Staying with
Sorry, I missed the name of the teacher.
Ashley Bell. Chemaina Elementary received a grant for $5,000 for their playground from Coast Capital. And we have a senior girls rugby team trip to Las Vegas. They have been invited to the Las Vegas Invitational Sevens tournament, March 1st to 5th. So we have a team of girls going to Vegas.
And no chaperones this
I
year.
just said that to Trustee Croft. What if the meeting were chaperones?
Would you like to volunteer for another list, Trustee Crowe?
Back to Mr. Allen.
Thank you. Back to the mundane. Not mundane. As you all know, our service clubs do wonderful things for us in this valley and with our kids in our schools. And just to put on your radar, the Rotary Club is initiating a Starfish Backpack project here. It's still in its early stages, but hopefully will be running before the end of the school year. There's been meetings about every 2 weeks with the Rotary Club and school principals and a few folks from the district, as well as Candace, as well as Chair Spilsbury. And the point behind the Starfish Backpacks is for students who may receive much of their food during the school week at school through breakfast programs, lunch programs, etc. Often go home on the weekends and don't have much to eat on the weekends, and so this is a program to send them home with a backpack full of food for the weekend. So we're starting with one school, and that will grow as the Rotary folks find increasing the sponsors and so on. It costs just over $500 for a student for the year, to sponsor a student for the year. So that's excellent work with our Rotary partners. Lions Club has instituted, will be beginning a vision screening process for our students in grades 1 and 3. That will check the vision of all students in grade 1 and 3. It's beginning, this is new to us, it's beginning this spring. They will be starting with a couple of schools in the central area to work out the logistics. It's a pretty high-tech process that they use, and then each family as well as the school gets a list of the vision acuity of the students, and hopefully at a young enough age that if the students are having vision issues, they can get corrected. So thanks to the Lions Club for that. Concludes my district update.
Over to board information.
Okey-dokey, for board information, I'm just taking my pencil out. And you see in your package an amendment to the school calendar. We are in year 3 of a 3-year calendar that the board adopted 2 years ago. And as you can see in the briefing note, the board has the ability to amend the calendar. We need to make those amendments known a month before actually formally making amendments, making them publicly available. So when we looked at next year's calendar, there's 2 changes that were required. One is around winter break, and initially the winter break was scheduled to start on December the 18th, but in further review of the collective agreement, that winter break would begin on, it says December the 25th, but really the last day of school would be Friday, December the 22nd. So just to stay compliant with the collective agreement, that needed to change. As well as the second amendment was spring break and district closure week. And you can see in the briefing note, due to where Easter falls this year, it made far more sense to move the district closure week ahead of spring break rather than following spring break, which frees up Easter and makes it far easier to work with our union employees, especially with QP. So that adjustment has been made as well in next year's calendar. So happy to answer any questions if there are on that.
Could I just add ask about the distribution of this information? Just because I've been asked by parents already in terms of their planning for Christmas and the dates, and so we'll go to schools and note through their
After a month,
newsletters and-
so after this notice period of a month from now, it will go out to schools, they will put it in their school newsletters,
on
it will go on our website, et cetera.
Thank you.
We're required to put that out by the end of May every year, anyway, we'll be ahead of that
Okay,
this year, but it will be.
thank you, trustee Drew.
As we had to move this calendar in the first place, do we have to have a motion to amend it?
I know that we moved the 3-year acceptance, so I assume we do. To amend it, but I'll refer to our procedural. Master here?
You have to have a motion.
Good. Moved by trustee Schiff, seconded by trustee Doe. Any conversation? Trustee Hutchins?
So the period of 1 month of input means what?
It's just a 1 month notice period.
What's a notice?
It's not an input period, it's just a notice period.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Actually,
May.
as soon as it's done here, it will now go out to the public. We have to send it to the ministry by March 15th, so we needed you to be aware of it now, so that and the public to be aware of the changes. You already approved the calendar, but it's an amendment, and the ministry requires, even though we've done a 3-year calendar, every year, March 15th, we have to give them our calendar, even though they already had it. So it's just procedural in that we need to sort of, before we give it to the ministry, that we, and it's not for debate or anything, it's just letting people know that we've made some changes, and then by the 15th of March it goes to the ministry.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment motion that's on the table? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Back to our superintendent.
Thank you, I'm feeling a bit like Mr. Sanquist with all these items. Bill 28 update. As you, and this is specifically to the staffing component of that. As you know, we had $718,000, and that turned into approximately 17 and a bit more FTE increase in our district. So just to sort of bring you up to speed on that hiring process. 22 current part-time teachers with contracts in our schools have received additional time through increases in their positions. 2 teachers on a recall list have claimed positions from recall for two of the positions, and 12 positions were posted ranging in FTE from 0.2 to 1.0. So again, they don't all go out in neat, tidy 1.0 packages. That was supposed to complete last week. Given the snow days, we did that. Not all the people got their resumes and packages in, but we anticipate concluding that in the next day or two to finish those processes, having those people hired and in position.
Thank you. And we do have a news release to release. Thank you. There's enough there for that side as well. And it just gives the same information to the public. So moving on to Secretary Treasurer. I believe the superintendent was concluded.
I was just going to conclude by saying, as this press release says, that it was a very collaborative process in our schools and at the district level in ensuring that we made, I think, good and yet not long and drawn out decisions to get staffing in place as quickly as possible. So kudos to our union folks and to teachers and principals and vice principals in schools that also had some really excellent conversations about getting supports in place.
And the board wants to thank all of you sincerely for that work and that collaboration. Thank you. We feel very proud of the district that we have that kind of reputation. Okay, moving to Mr. Sanquist.
Thank you. For board information, we have the 2017-28 budget development schedule. This was created with the assistance of board chair and taken through the district's advisory committee. It's here for information. It's adjusted a bit from last year's schedule in that the timing of the trustee AGM has been shifted a week due to the timing of Easter. As well, this year the public opportunity for public meeting has been moved to later in the process, so when more options would be available for feedback. So it's here for information. Mark your calendars. It's a wild ride.
Any comments from trustees, any questions?
Thank you. The next item I have is the 2016-2017 amended annual budget. This budget was brought through the Board Business and Education Committee earlier in January and was recommended for adoption by the board. And I just wanted to walk through some comments I have prior to making that, or bringing forward that recommendation. First is that we're pleased to present the 16-17 amended annual budget this evening to the board. It is consolidated the operating, special purpose, and capital funds. It is in the form and containing the information required by the Ministry of Education. The annual budget was adopted by the board on May 3rd, 2016, and that budget is a dynamic document that is managed and amended to reflect changes as they occur throughout the school year. So the budget, almost minutes after it's been adopted, changes again as we learn more information and new information comes to light. There have been some significant amendments to this budget. School age enrollment grew by 169.25 FTE over our projections as of September 30th, 2016. Special education designations increased by projections from projections by 139 FTE. That's almost 23%. It's very significant growth. Aboriginal education students receiving a program of enhanced study increased by 64 FTE from projections. Again, a large area of growth. So taking those three growth areas into the funding formula, funding increased by almost $3 million from what was projected when the board prepared the annual budget in May. The district received notification that the administrative savings that were removed from the estimated funding calculation would be returned to districts. This resulted in an additional $348,000 of revenue. The district received funding for the elimination of in-catchment busing fees in the amount of $283,524. That happened in August. An additional, but also with all that additional revenue came additional expenditures. So an additional $851,000 was required for education assistance to provide support to those newly designated students. As well, almost $1.4 million in teaching staff supported the enrollment growth and student supports. Exempt staff compensation freeze was lifted after being implemented in 2009. That allowed for some compensation improvements for exempt principal and vice principal staffing. And after removing the district's payment towards the retirement of unfunded employee future benefits in the 16-17 annual budget, $50,000 is being reinstated. If $50,000 is committed for the next 3 years, that liability will be exhausted. The district's been working on that liability since 2002. So there are certainly, this budget leaves $994,000 that remains available for future board directions, but doesn't come without risk. This budget is presented with 5 months, or when this meeting was going to be held last week, with 5 months remaining and half of the school year. Certainly there are some risks, and when I wrote this report, I was considering that it had been colder than recent years, and that there was potential for additional stress on the district's utility and snow clearing budgets. Last week we had that additional stress on the district's snow clearing budgets, so certainly there are pressures, but as we get closer to the end of the year, the budget becomes more and more reliable as things become less unknown. One of the offsets, February is usually one of our highest months of employee absenteeism due to colds and flu. It'd be interesting to see if 3 days of school closures actually helps that. I mean, there certainly was a catch-up period for staff who may have been tired and exhausted to have a day to sleep and rest, and so there may be some higher snow removal costs that are offset by some lower sick leave costs. Time will tell when the data comes in. Also, longer-term risks are the implication of the Supreme Court of Canada decision on class size and composition. Many unknowns, and I put that down here as a risk in that we don't really know what the 2017-2018 budget is going to look like until the ministry announces funding on March 15th. But there is still a significant unallocated surplus that the board has held back with this budget, that $994,000. That was certainly could certainly support any changes required in 17-18. So each year, the board is required to adopt the annual budget before February 28th. This budget reflects the second year of enrollment growth and the first year in many that the district has not operated in funding protection. The result of that growth has been that each additional student and designation has resulted in revenue for the district, and that revenue was taken and reinvested into schools and services for students. So I'd like to thank Karen and the finance staff who track and calculate all of these changes as they go on throughout the year. It'll change again once it's adopted this evening, but it is a budget at a point in time required to be submitted to the ministry. So it's here for board consideration as brought forward from the Board Business and Education Committee. So if there aren't any questions, I would go into the first reading.
Thank you. Trustee Schmidt?
So moved.
So first reading, moved by Trustee Schmidt, seconded by Trustee Thorn. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to second reading. Moved by Trustee Schmidt, seconded by Trustee DeGroot. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to the third, that we consider 3 readings this evening. Moved by Trustee DeGroot, seconded by Trustee Thorn. All those in favor? Motion carries. And moving to the third and final reading. Moved by Trustee Croft, seconded by Trustee DeGroot. All those in favor? The motion carries. Moving to item B, Old Crofton. School closure bylaw.
Thank you. There's a briefing note included in the package, and Gina's brought it up on the screen. At the January 3rd, 2017 open board meeting, the board passed a motion to give notice of intent to close the Old Crofton Elementary School. The new school had been opened in 2009 and the old school had not yet been closed. A public meeting was held on January 17th in accordance with the district's policy 2445 on school closure, and there were approximately 10 members of the public in attendance to provide feedback, and that feedback is included in the minutes of that meeting, which are in this package. Based on the feedback from the public and district senior staff, we'd like to recommend that the Board of Education formally close Old Crofton Elementary School and begin the property disposal process.
Moved by Trustee Schmidt, seconded by Trustee Croft. Trustee Schmidt?
I just got to say that I don't think a community could have spoken any louder. And they did that night. It was a very good discussion, and they just want us to close it so that they can make their plans on what's going to happen with it. So it was a good meeting.
Thank you. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to the second reading. Trustee DeGroot, seconded by Trustee Schmidt. Any conversation? All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to the third reading. Trustee Thorn and Trustee DeGroot. Any conversation? All those in favor? Motion carries. And moving to the third and final reading. Trustee Hutchins and Trustee Schmidt. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to committees and outside organizations. The first is the minutes of EEBC. Trustee Hutchins.
Board of Education received the minutes of November 22nd, 2016, a long time ago, Board of Education and Business Committee meeting.
Thank you. Moved by trustee Hutchins, seconded by trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to item B, DSAT meeting, trustees Thorne and Schmidt.
That the Board of Education receive the highlights of the January 11th, 2017 DSAT meeting.
Moved by trustee Schmidt, seconded by trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carries. Trustee Hutchins, is that a?
Yes.
Yes, that's item C, trustee Croft.
That the Board of Education receives a summary of the January 17th, 2017 Advisory Committee meeting.
Thank you. Moved by trustee Croft, seconded by trustee Schmidt. Any conversation? All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to item D, trustee Schmidt.
That the Board of Education receive the minutes of the January 19th, 2017 DSAT meeting.
Thank you. Moved
So
by
moved.
trustee Schmidt, seconded by trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to item E, BCSTA Provincial Council, trustee DeGroot.
I think you all got, there are 4 motions that are gonna be discussed that are, one is Fraser Valley Branch Constitution and Bylaws, which, will not affect us at all. Next is funding of direct and indirect costs arising from the Supreme Court. I know that I sent it out to you. I'm not asking for us to vote on this. If you've got any information that you want to give me, I get the same thing as before. Just send me your information. I just wanna make sure that I am doing what you would like me to do and saying what you would like me to say. So there are 3 motions that you're looking at, which is the funding, recruitment and retention in northern districts. They're kind of concerned that if lots of teachers get hired at places like Surrey, that they will leave and they won't be able to get more teachers up there. And the other one is funding for Syrian refugees in our school districts. In some areas, it's becoming quite difficult to provide enough support services for these people. So those are the 3 that you need to look at. Thank you. I'll just send an email that.
So email back if you have any email. Okay, moving to item 10, upcoming meetings and events. On page 50. Any additions?
The board planning session has been changed from February 9th.
Yes, to the 23rd. Did you want to talk about dates for board planning sessions in general?
In general, I think, I believe the original motion was to ensure the board planning was in the second week after the board meeting, or the week after the board meeting, not, I think we said the second.
I think it was the second to Thursday.
And then some 3 out of 5 months is actually in the same week rather than the second week. So the week after,
Which we didn't anticipate.
which we didn't
Turned
anticipate.
out.
So do we need a new motion to follow through on that intent?
And when would that put the board planning meeting?
The week after the board meeting?
After the board meeting? Does that ever coincide with our advisory committee meetings? Because that would be Thursday. Oh, okay, so you're not saying it on a Tuesday, on a Thursday? Okay. Motion to change.
I would like to recommend that we change the timing of the board planning session to occur on the Thursday in the week after the board meeting.
Moved by trustee Hutchins, seconded by trustee Croft. Any discussion? Okay, let's hope it works out. All those in favor? Motion carries. Anything else on the upcoming committee and other meetings schedule? Okay, moving to no correspondence, no new business, question period. Chris?
Just a point of information, another teacher that recently passed away is Joan Eichenlaw. She was a longstanding, she's worked in the district quite a bit, but most recently in Lake Cowichan. She was born in 1954 and passed away on the 28th of January.
Thank you. Sorry to hear that. Anything further from our audience on questions? Motion to adjourn. Trustee DeGroot, trustee Schmidt, all those in favor? Motion carries.
Happy Valentine's Day.